So good evening, everybody, and welcome to the presenter series for IACT IMDHA. We are getting ready for Hypno Expo 2020, the joy of positive change. It'll be here in Orlando, Florida, April 24th through the 26th. And there will be some pre and post-conference programs before and after that weekend, which is what brings us here. Because we're going to be talking about those pre and post-conference programs over the course of the next 5 Sundays. We will have 2 presenters for you each evening of the folks that are offering those programs. So very quickly, I want to introduce, you're used to seeing me here with my friend Karen Hand, and lovely Karen Hand is off tonight and in Las Vegas, being robbed by some one-armed bandits or two. And God bless you, Patty Scott has agreed to help us out here. Patty, I just want to tell you, is a lady who runs the medical specialty certification through IACT, and she was she did a medical presentation for the Galaxy of the Stars last year as well. So a great hypnotherapist, but also a great friend of mine. So I really appreciate that you're here, Patty, and welcome. Oh, your microphone is muted. You can, oh, I'm sorry. So by the way, down in the lower left-hand corner, everybody, of your screen, there is a microphone that you can click on to unmute your microphone when that comes. But Patty, your mic's open now and you can talk.
Ah, okay. I was gonna say, I might have to learn to do hand sign language real fast. Okay, are we ready to start this? We got a few people here. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. It is my great honor and privilege. I'm so happy that Michael asked me to do this, because this is one of the most exciting things that has come along the field since I've been in it. And that is that Michael Watson is going to be this year at the conference on April 21st through 23rd and 27th and 28th, going to be heading up the Certified Master Trainer training. I am really excited about this, and as everyone else should be. It's 5 days of training, first of all, with Michael Watson. That makes it exciting in and of itself. And to become a master trainer, what a great thing to learn how to do, and what a great person to learn. I can't think of anybody better that's got a better background to teach people how to be master trainers. So let me tell you a little bit about Michael. Michael Watson is an international trainer of the NLP and Ericksonian hypnosis. He has been practicing hypnotherapy for over 40 years. That can't be right.
Yeah.
He started when he was 4. Okay, 40 years, my goodness, I didn't even realize it'd been that long. He is a former trainer for Salad Limited in the UK and on the training team for NLP of the Rockies and the Up Hypnosis Institute. A life diplomat of the IMDHA, International Medical and Dental Hypnotherapy Association, of course, and IACT Educator of the Year. Michael is a faculty member of HPTI, and he is the director of Phoenix Services for Personal Development, which he founded in 1991. Known for his lighthearted and caring style, Michael's training programs are as enjoyable as they are practical. His developmental work in evolutionary hypnosis is cutting edge and offers a new skill set to hypnotists in contemporary practice. When he's not traveling and training, he lives in Orlando, Florida, where he maintains a private practice. And I can vouch for his excellence as a trainer. He's been one of my favorite trainers throughout my entire hypnosis career. And I am so happy to introduce him now to you, the Certified Master Trainers trainer, Michael Watson. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here. You know, I'm so used to being on the other side of this. Microphone, so it's a little strange for me, but I am so excited about doing this training. And one of the things for me is that I really have an appreciation for education. I really have an appreciation for quality education and for interacting with and working with people that are just passionate about doing hypnosis. And those are the folks that end up, you know, in the trainer training. Ultimately, they're ready to take it to the next level and to the next generation. So Patty, you said you didn't believe that it was 40 years. Yes, I started when I was -4, actually. That's correct. But yeah, so it has been 40 years. I mean, 1979 is when I first started doing hypnosis, and over those 40 years, here's the thing that I notice is this field really is evolving, and so when we look at it, we kind of think this is what hypnosis is. We're gonna learn what it is. But learning hypnosis is an ongoing process. It's always about continuing to understand new things and to be aware of new ways of being for for the folks that we work with. There was a time when that guy with the white coat and maybe a stethoscope commanded so much authority that all he had to do was to say stuff to you, and you said yes doctor, no doctor, and all he had to do was say to you sleep and your eyes closed, and your chin fell down to your chest, and etc. This isn't the world that we live in anymore. So it's really important for us to be very much aware of what changes are required, going forward. So over the last 40 years, one of the things that I've noticed that has really changed is some of my cassette tapes don't even work anymore. They don't even play anymore, right? And yet when I first started doing this, it was all about cassette tapes. Everybody had acres and acres of cassette recordings, and then finally VHS tapes, and then you know and what's happened since then is we have begun to update our delivery system. So we went from that to things like CDs and DVDs ultimately. We began to update our relationships. We did understand that kind of Marcus Welby medical practitioner attitude was not the right one for us anymore, and that we had different expectations from our clients. Some of us did, at least, and also our science has continued to offer us more information. So what we know about hypnosis is different, than what we knew a long time ago. And so here's the thing about being a trainer in hypnosis is we actually get to have something to say about where it is that hypnosis goes as it continues to develop, and how it goes and how it is that we carry it forward, because we're the ones that are going to do that. What I notice with a lot of fields, and this is one of my serious criticisms, if I can be so bold about NLP, I think. When I first took my NLP practitioner training, the training was like 27 days long, and and we really worked, and we were passionate about what we were doing. Then what I noticed is that the demands of the marketplace started shrinking the length of the training, started trimming out the content of the trainings, until finally there was so little left, and yet just enough to squeak by a marketplace that didn't really understand what they were missing. And I am so proud to be a member of IACT, and IACT and IMDHA both, for exactly the reason that through the years and through the last decade more than anything, they have raised the bar, that in a time when people were looking for the quick, short, and dirty, trainings, they've raised the bar, and have a standard that is higher than most of the rest of the industry. That really is impressive to me, because we really do want to honor this field of hypnosis that we're a part of, by making sure that we are conveying it thoroughly and thoughtfully and in a way that can really be used by people. So, by the way, Patty, I know I gave you some talking points, and I'm just like flying, flying through these things. But because here's the thing that's happening now, by the way, the Train the Trainer course, some of you may already be familiar with what it had been like in the past, and God bless George Bien, who expanded that course and added and added and added to it, and finally complemented it with acres of DVDs and CDs and PowerPoint slideshows and stuff. Certainly had that progressive streak that says, we need to keep pushing forward and pushing forward. And to me, my sense is that the way that we need to keep pushing forward is that we're moving now into the world of digital downloads as well. You know, so something that I really expect to see and in the process of developing as a part of this training is a community of certified master trainers that actually have an opportunity to participate with one another online. We're even going to be talking about some tools that people can use to train online and how to do that effectively, maybe even to do that jointly with other practitioners. But there are so many things available to us as we move forward into this field of training that that it really is an exciting time to do it. So in the future, there will be more tech and more neuroscience, uh, and what we need to do most of all, and this is something that I keep saying, and I always worry when I say it if some people are going to be offended, and I need to preface it by telling you that uh, a, I am a devoted fan of Milton Erickson. It is in my blood. I was sort of came into the world of hypnosis through an Ericksonian community and orientation. And so Milton Erickson is somebody who is very special to me and will always be very special to me. In the field of hypnosis, we have this lovely person in the form of Milton. There's some people that have similar feelings about Dave Ellman, for example, and appropriately so, because these are two guys that contributed a hell of a lot to the field in the period of time that they were making their contributions. But those contributions that they made are more than 50 years old now. And somehow or another, people keep asking themselves the question, you know, what would Milton Erickson do in this situation, or what would Dave Ellman do in this situation? And I'm like, well, if they were really the wonderful creatures that we want to hold them as, they would probably be innovating something else. They would continue to be developing the work that they were doing. And so rather than going through a training and learning how to impersonate somebody who's been dead for 40 and 50 years, now it's time for us to start figuring out where the edges of those models are and what it is that we can continue to adapt, what we can learn from them, and what is the next generation of hypnosis, because we are no longer in the Erickson-Ellman generation. You know, it is, like I said, 50 years later. So in the master trainer training, by the way, before I get away from this, I'm not really going to be teaching people how to do hypnosis. I think that if you want to be a master trainer of hypnosis, then you probably should already be a certified hypnotist or hypnotherapist. And in fact, that is a prerequisite of the program, that you be certified in hypnosis for a couple of years. And you should already have that down. It should be at the place where you're going, now I want to take that a little bit further. There are certainly going to be things in the curriculum, as much as we try to find out what would really be the standard, if you will, curriculum for hypnotherapy. There may be some things in the curriculum that we'll be offering you that weren't in the training that you took originally. And so we'll make sure that those things, that anything that's a little unusual or anything that's different is really clear to you, so that, you know, so that you can do it yourself and so that you can offer it to your classes. But we are offering you a complete curriculum, which is accompanied then by a trainer's manual. So there's basically a basic and advanced curriculum. And then there's a basic and advanced trainer manual to accompany it. And the trainer manual has a whole lot of notes and other information about things that, as a trainer, when you're teaching each of the various sections of the training, that you will want to have at your disposal to add to enrich, to enhance your presentation, and maybe some tips that can help you with demonstrations and various things like that. But also in the process, and I am so excited about this, I have secured a web space to do this. What we're going to do is we're going to take all of that digital material, and rather than sending you home with a carload of DVDs and CDs, we're going to create a web space that is exclusive to certified master trainer students and graduates. and not just for now, but for, for ongoing. That going through this training will get you access to all of this information, and it will get you continued access to all of this information, and continued access and involvement to whatever degree you want to have it in a community of trainers that will be interacting with each other for any kind of support that you need, any kind of new information that comes along, anything that we all can share with each other. Because I'm really not interested in creating something that is Michael Watson's training. What I'm ultimately interested in is creating something that really comes from IACT itself, so that as we get this thing going, and more people take the training and continue to develop their work, that we can continue to adjust our training material to reflect that, and that in the long run it will finally be something that truly comes from the certified master trainers themselves. I think that's really the best thing in the world. And on that website, what we intend to have now, I want to be straightforward about this. It's going to take a little while to get all of this that I'm talking about done. We are breaking ground. The shovel has still got dirt on it, but it would be my hope eventually to have every technique that is included in the training curriculum represented on the website in video form, so that later on, when you're doing a training somewhere, and if there's a part you're like, I don't quite remember what that was, you actually can look up and see it, every single piece of the training. This is a lofty goal, but it's something that I really am committed to, and really am excited about. Not only will those techniques be there, but a whole lot of, again, notes and information and things that you can use to enhance your presentation of it later on. So we want to not only give you the curriculum, but we want to take your hand. We want to walk you through it, and be there for you, all along the way. But we also want to be able to learn from you, how it is that you bring your own style to it. So that because the thing that I also know is that each and every one of the trainers that we have out there already, they're all unique individuals. And they really all have something different to offer. I can think of a couple people. I'm not going to name any names, but I can think of a couple people that I know that are hypnotherapists, and they're very good, and they have a certain way of speaking, and a certain way of presenting, and a certain style in their work. And take a moment to just focus on my eye and take a deep breath and just let it out and just drop down into trance. And and this approach. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. Make sure I'm saying that. Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with anything that works, right? And then there's somebody like me who has a different idea about this, because and although I do exactly the same things, what I know is my style is really different, and it probably is really different only because of where it comes from. Some of you, most of you, I don't know who's on this particular call, but I think a lot of you kind of know enough about my story to have heard that I came into this field of hypnosis by stepping out of a Benedictine monastery and into pastoral counseling work in the late 70s, at a time when what was really current in counseling psychology, and particularly in spiritual counseling as well, were creative imagery processes and guided imagery meditations. They were just brand new things. And in fact, so some of you who are younger and who don't really know this time directly, other than, of course, you're aware that it happened, might not know, but a whole lot of those processes came out of monasteries. Seems like nuns contributed more to hypnosis than you may than you may realize. So I was doing these things with clients. And one day, one of my clients said to me, after coming out of a very profound inner experience, he says, Michael, this is really hypnosis. And it was really strange to me, because I didn't count backwards. I didn't wave a watch. I didn't do any of the things that I thought happened in hypnosis. I didn't know anything about hypnosis. But I knew something about mystical experience. I knew something about going to some deep, special place inside of myself where amazing things could happen. And then somebody put a word on it, this word that started with an H, and that was great because my undergraduate degree before seminary had been linguistics. So the next thing I knew, I became, deeply involved with neurolinguistic programming, and through NLP, introduced to Stephen Gilligan, who is a protege of Milton Erickson's, and got, and got my official hypnosis start, that way all those years ago. Since then, when I finished, by the way, studying and learning from Stephen, when I had an experience that I hope nobody else ever has to deal with. I had an experience of having gone from because my first hypnosis course actually was a 30-hour class. It wasn't Stephen or anybody, and it wasn't even NLP yet. It was this lady. When I found out that this was hypnosis, it was a lady in Texas that was teaching a hypnosis certification course. I will tell you, I was so naive that I thought that probably there's only two people in the world that teach hypnosis, because that's, such an unusual thing. And I didn't know anybody like that. So I moved I moved from Chicago to Houston, Texas, and took a 30-hour training from this woman. And at the end of it, I had the sense that I was really good at inductions, but I had already been pretty good at sort of moving people into these deep spaces, but that I didn't know much about what to do with clients beyond that in terms of being really useful and any serious change work. NLP sort of offered me something about that gap, but when I met Stephen Gilligan and started studying hypnosis from folks that I really consider to be masters in the highest sense of that word, it was as though I had gone from grammar school to graduate school and missed everything that was in between. And so it was after I already had my experiences with hypnosis, and and they had been profound and gone on for quite some while for me. Then I had to start filling in the pieces, like, well, what is a handshake induction, and who is this guy Dave Ellman, and what and all of the things now that we take for granted. But it was literally as though I had to fill in the middle as I went along. So the lovely thing about this is that in the curriculum that we're developing, and there's still some stuff changing it, but as of right now, there are essentially 80 some topics that that seem to be the things that are essential to a rich and full understanding of hypnosis and how it works, and a proper skill base. I'm willing to bet that there's really probably more than 80, and that we'll find more things. And again, we're gonna learn together, because the other thing that I love about trainings, and at least the way that I do training, is that we will have this great experience in my sense, that happens over and over again in my history, of creating a community together in this training room, where we really can learn something, from one another, and explore some cool stuff. So,
Michael, I don't want to interrupt you because you're just giving us so much.
well, I want you to, because I was going to say, I think I should probably take a breath. And
I didn't want to interrupt you. No, because especially your background, one of the things I thought would be interesting is the great teachers that you had, because that's the thing. And I love the support. To me, that's a real important element that is going to be very strong in this program, is to have, and I'm sure if we have time, I'd like to hear some more about some of that support after someone finishes this training, because it does happen so often, even when someone goes to a trainer to learn hypnosis. When I first started, same thing probably that happened to you. They teach you hypnosis, then they throw you out in the world, and that's it. You're
Yep.
trying to figure it out what to do from there. So I love the support idea. I'd like to hear more about that. But here's the thing, because again, to be a trainer, to be a really good trainer, first of all, who should be coming to this? Who should be interested in becoming a trainer, maybe that might not be thinking about it? And also, what makes someone a good trainer? You've had great trainers. I have. I'm sure everyone else on this call has had people that really influenced them and that inspired them in their practice, what to you makes a great trainer?
Mm. Well, part of it, I think, is one of the things. There's a gimmick behind a great trainer, and I don't mean it's sort of one that they can put on. I think it's one that they come into the world with. That is behind every great trainer. I believe that there is a great paradigm. That is, a great trainer has a way that he or she thinks about what it is that they're doing that makes it a powerful thing for them to do it. They have a really good why, or you know, and they don't necessarily always know it. But see, one of the examples that I love to give people, I am for reasons that may be obvious. I'm a great fan of Mother Teresa's. And Mother Teresa was a Benedictine monk, and every or nun rather. Every time I tell this story, by the way, I think I have to preface it because I want to make sure people understand I'm not preaching, and I'm not telling anybody you need to take Mother Teresa's values, but I'd love for people to notice how this works, because Mother Teresa was a Benedictine nun, and the rule of Saint Benedict says that you should receive all men, and I think that he would have said men and women if he could rewrite it, that you should receive all men and women as Christ. So here is a woman who is looking to give her devotion to God, and she has the understanding that everybody that comes to her is that. So she goes down by the river and she works with a community of people that I call the Statue of Liberty folks. The sign lists all the tired and the weary and the poor and the disenfranchised, and the nobody wants to sit next to this guy on the bus, and whoever else is on that list, and ministers to them every day. And they ask her, how do you do that and it doesn't get to you? And she said, when I see these people, I see our Lord Christ in some of his more distressing disguises. Now, I just think that is incredibly profound. Whether, again, not because of the Christian message, but because it strikes right at the heart of what's important to Teresa and empowers her to do the work that she did. So, I really know, and I really believe you used the phrase evolutionary hypnosis, which is kind of how I think about the work that I do. I believe that at the center of each and every one of us, there is something wonderful that is seeking emergence into the world, that is seeking expression, that we're evolving by nature. That's what we do. And that every once in a while, due to circumstances of life, that desire to express gets frustrated. It just doesn't come out the way that it's supposed to. It's just the evolution just doesn't go the way that it ought to. And the result of that are things that end up listed in the DSM. The very conditions, the very symptoms that bring people into our office, I have a sense that are often simply the result of that place within them really needing to be opened up and to be given expression in the world. So, gosh, we we have this great opportunity to sit down day after day with somebody across from us and know that there is a wunderkind there. There is something there that is so magnificent, and I have the lovely task of being able to invite it to come forward into the world. We are bringing people out, and
So,
so
Michael, it sounds like your training trainers is exactly that same thing. You're not teaching them how to do something like someone else maybe would do it. It sounds like your same philosophy that you have with clients,
sure.
what you're going to be doing with these people who have a desire to be a great trainer or a master trainer, that you're going to reach within them and help them to find their own inner way of doing the techniques and the things that you're going to be teaching them.
Well, and in fact, the very fact that they have a desire to become a trainer means that the process is the game is already afoot. I don't really have to do a lot to bring it out. One of the things that I made a promotional piece for this program that I was really disappointed with when I looked at it later, and I said, because it just doesn't seem enthusiastic enough. But but part of the problem was I thought, gosh, if I really have to convince people to be excited about this, uh, that concerns me because because I think that the people that are really going to make great trainers, the people that are going to really run with a program like this, are the folks that somewhere in the middle of them is something already that says, I want to take my hypnosis training a little farther. I want to make a difference in how hypnosis goes into the future. I want to I want to participate in the next part of the ripple, you know. And in the long run, by the way, who we're thinking about when we're doing this training. I mean, I know that the students in this training would like to believe that I am thinking about them, and of course I am. And I am thinking about the field of hypnosis, and of course I am. But I'm also really thinking about the clients, that the students of my students are going to, you understand what I mean, that there are waves from here. If somebody takes my class, what I know is that they're going to teach somebody else to do hypnosis, and that person is going to work with a client. And the world is touched in a big way by what we do. So and so I really do take it seriously, and there's nothing that I love better than helping people get whatever it is that they need to be able to offer it to others and to train it to others. So during the 5 days that we're together, we might as well just uh, pitch a tent and hunker down, because that really is the nature of it. We're gonna do a bunch of exercises. We're gonna really explore how to do training, and we're going to cover some of the difficult pieces. We're especially going to pay attention to how to present hypnosis effectively.
I
That's
just have another question, Michael, if I can.
Go ahead.
Um, for those of us who maybe are already trainers, already had some training either at IACT, IMDHA, or elsewhere, who would like to take it to the next level, what kind of opportunities would there be for those people who maybe have been already training people? Is that part of this?
Uh, well, I don't want to say too, I don't want to say too prematurely, but if you've already taken the certified master trainer training,
Yes,
then
yes.
oh my gosh, then people that have already been in this program, as far as I'm concerned, once you step through that door, you're a part of this program for life. And whether it was now 5 years ago or 10 years ago, if you have taken the master trainer training program and you want to review it, you can review it again, when we do it this time, and you can review it without paying any tuition whatsoever. There is a charge, and the charge is a $95 materials fee, because there's a bunch of, printed stuff and things like that. But we want to make sure that we're reaching out to everybody, and continuing to make education available for trainers. So if you take it now, by the way, if you take it this year, and 3 or 4 years from now that you decide that you want to, re-up it, or just kind of refresh, or see what's new, then come on back and do it again, and you'll always be welcome.
Fabulous. I love that because it will be changing, I imagine, very quickly, especially here at the beginning,
Mhm.
with you, this being the first year that you are offering this.
Sure. And
And
by the way, all of those changes too, because the manual will probably change every year. I intend to have an open document on my computer that through the course of the year, that continues to get tweaked, or if there's something that we discover we really need to include that perhaps was left out, or something that we maybe didn't express as clearly as we could have, there will be modifications. So that each year when it comes time for a conference again, we'll release a new version of it, and that version will be included in that digital area that is exclusive to people that have been through the CMT course. And that's going to be available, by the way, to people who have already finished the course as well. I'm getting a letter out to them to let them know about it. That online community is for everybody who's ever been in this program.
very good, very good. So it's open to pretty much anyone who has a desire, you said, and that really has an inner calling, if you will, to help other people who would
Mhm.
like to become hypnotists and be out there and just spread the good word.
Yeah.
And are there any other pre-qualifications required other than, you said, a couple of years of experience as a hypnotist?
Yeah. Certified for at least 2 years in hypnosis or hypnotherapy.
Right. Very
Absolutely.
nice.
Yeah.
Anything else about the, I don't know how much time we've got left
Well,
here.
only a few minutes, actually. We've got about 5 minutes left. So I'm wondering if anybody has any questions, we might let them know.
Yeah,
That what you can do. So Patty, are you in gallery mode still? Can you see
yes,
everything?
yes.
Oh, that's great. So if anybody has any questions, all they really need to do is to raise their hand because Patty can see you. Uh,
Except that most of the people aren't on camera.
well, then maybe they'll just
They don't want to be
a
seen.
useful thing to be on camera. So yeah, if you're not on camera, also there's a chat box that you can open if you haven't opened it already. It's just about right underneath my chin on your screen, and you could type a question in the chat box, and that would be all right as well. But we are just about out of time. I'm going to look really fast and make sure there's not anything that I have left out.
So
I mean,
do
I could
the
talk.
graduates get a nice certificate when they finish this, nice certificate for their wall? I love certificates.
Do you still have wall space available, Patty?
Well, now I do. Yeah.
Yes, of course. Of course, there will be a certificate. Uh, absolutely. So,
Questions from anyone out there? I'd like to ask any other questions that we haven't covered.
oh, there we go. Here's one. So William says, I'm not really interested in becoming a trainer yet, but your approach to client-centered work matches mine. Do I offer courses that would be appropriate? Well, sure, well, sure, William, I do. I'll tell you what, in fact, one of the things that we might want to do here, and we'll give Roy a chance to do this when it's his turn as well, is to let people know that you can get in touch with me, and William, you might want to do this by writing me at FLHypno. Just remember, I'm in Florida and I do hypnosis. So it's FLHYPNO at outlook.com. And in terms of other trainings or other programs, I'd be happy to talk to you about what's available there. And I also do, and I'm not sure if I'm speaking out of school here, but I think Roy may as well do some mentorship, but I'm not certain about that. So I'll let him tell you. So he's nodding his head yes. So you also can just get in touch with us and set up some mentoring arrangements if you're interested in that. So thanks for your question, William. I appreciate it.
Okay. Looks like we've just about reached the end of this one. So do we have any business to take care of, Michael, before we move on here?
No, just again, thank everybody for their time and attention so far, and to let you know that just in a couple of minutes we will be introducing Roy Hunter, and I do at the beginning of each section. So now I'm switching roles. By the way, can you see the changing hat? I do like to just remind you all again that you are being recorded, so be aware. You won't actually get on the recording unless you speak, but that keys the microphone and keys the camera to record you. So so do be aware. And
And Michael, you want to repeat the dates for that training? And are you doing some other trainings throughout the weekend?
oh, sure. So yeah, so my training, the Certified Master Trainer training, is 5 days. It's April 21st, 22nd, 23rd, and then the 24th through the 26th is the weekend of the conference, and then it's the 27th and the 28th for the last 2 days. A part of that will be training hypnosis techniques, and a part of that will be training in trainer technology and how to put trainings together and all of that kind of stuff. So, and it will be a learning adventure. Uh, during the conference, yes, Patty, I do have something else that I'm doing, and I'm doing so many things that at the moment I'm embarrassed to say so. I can't remember what particular program that is because I've got another one running through my head at the same time. Too,
Check
too
out the
much
catalog. Check out
but,
the Hypno Expo catalog.
and by the way, if I might just put a little plug in here, because you are dialed into the same login number that is the regular login for the virtual chapter. So Karen Hand and I run the virtual chapter on a regular monthly basis. It's the second Tuesday night of every month. at this exact same time, at this exact same login. And we always have great guests because we are fortunate and so blessed to know everybody. I think it seems because we go to all of the dues. So anyway, we hope you'll join us for the virtual chapter as well. And CEUs available for everybody. You get CEUs for being here for tonight. This program, the whole program with me and Roy together, is an hour and a half. So you get 1.5 hours worth of CEUs. If you don't know how to do that, it's really simple. You go to the IACT website or IACT and IMDHA website, whichever one you're a member of. You log in with your login ID. If you don't know your login ID, then you'll need to give a call. But it's something that you set up actually when you filled out your initial membership paperwork. And as soon as you enter that there's a form that comes up where you can say, I spent 3 hours listening to Michael rattle on and I want that time back. So give me credit and they will give you credit. So be sure and do that. And they'll also give you credit for listening to Roy, even though you may not want that time back because it will be time so well spent. So with all of that said, I think, Patty, it is time for us to continue on to our next segment. And we've already sort of given a lot of hints about who it is going to be. But you might like to introduce this gentleman.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And Roy, before I introduce him, just to let you know that he's going to be doing a parts therapy training at the pre-conference, and that'll be Wednesday and Thursday, April 22nd and 23rd, and then post-conference on Monday and Tuesday. For those who you can either do the whole thing or do one of these. I believe he can go into this a little bit more. Monday and Tuesday, the 27th and 28th of April, he's doing Train the Parts Therapy Trainer, which I had the pleasure of taking a few years ago, so I can vouch for the wonderful content. And so let me just introduce Roy officially here a little bit here. Roy Hunter is the published author of several books, a whole lot of books actually, that are highly praised by professionals, and he's an experienced trainer with a strong background in sales. In addition to teaching professional hypnosis and advanced techniques to professionals around the world, he teaches self-hypnosis to groups and clients for personal or professional motivation. Roy's presentations include numerous workshops, both in the USA and abroad, for groups and businesses as well, as for international hypnosis conventions. He also speaks and presents at those. Besides selling self-help since 1983, his sales experience includes insurance as well as various his hypnosis text, The Art of Hypnosis, 3rd edition, Crown House Publishing, 2010, is required reading at many schools of hypnosis around the world. The professional hypnosis training course he wrote and developed is currently taught by other instructors, and Roy was inducted into the International Hypnosis Hall of Fame in April of 2000 for his written contributions to the field of hypnotherapy. His parts therapy text, Hypnosis for Inner Conflict Resolution, introduces parts therapy, that's Crown House Publishing, 2005, has received raving reviews. His regression text, co-authored by Bruce Eimer, PhD, is already considered a classic. It is titled The Art of Hypnotic Regression Therapy, a Clinical Guide, in Crown House Publishing 2012. And Roy's latest book, The Art of Spiritual Hypnosis, 2016, Blooming Twig Publishing, includes contributions by over 24 respected hypnosis professionals from around the world, of which I am a proud one of those. I didn't even remember that was in there. So I'm very proud to introduce to you, if you haven't already been introduced to him, Roy Hunter.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm testing this new mic. Can everyone hear me okay? Great. It's hard to believe the journey has taken me so far since I got certified by Charles Tebbets in 1983.
Yeah.
Little did I know that the founder and pioneer of client-centered parts therapy also should be considered one of the pioneers of client-centered hypnosis, which means fitting the technique to the client rather than trying to fit the client to a handful of techniques.
Yeah. Right before you get underway, I wanna just make a comment, and that is that um, you are the guy, and I keep saying this to people all the time. You have to know I don't, your ears must buzz because I talk about you a lot. Um, I think I had my first computer. I was on a Usenet news group that some people don't even know what that is. But before there was Facebook or any of those things, it was basically computing in the Stone Age, and yet we found have conversations. And I met Roy Hunter all the way back then. It must have been about 1980, gosh, 6 or so, 7 maybe. Uh, I don't know for sure, but way
It was called alt dot hypnosis.
all that hypnosis. Yeah, and you were a great contributor even back then. And you have, and in fact, I have a Microsoft Word document version of the Art of Hypnosis that you sent me. And you have been making a contribution to the world of hypnosis ever since that time. So, so everybody, this is one of the great guys here, and I want to make sure that it is that it's not missed.
Thank you, Michael.
Well, you're welcome. So, Roy, can I ask you the official question for this interview?
Certainly.
The official question is, what is parts therapy?
Arts therapy is based on the concept that we wear many hats. Right now, you're seeing my instructor hat. When I work with a client, the client sees my hypnotherapist cap. When I have worked hard and want to have some fun, I put on one of my inner child hats and just forget about work and do something fun, like last month seeing the new Star Wars movie. When my wife and I want to do something pleasurable, then I put on my husband hat. As we progress through the timeline of life, we go through various phases. So I suspect I had an inner protector the first time I got into a fight, which, if memory serves me, was when I was about 4 years old. I thought for years that I had all the parts I wanted when I heard that somebody in the 90s who got a hold of the art of hypnotherapy was teaching his students to create new parts, to do new jobs. And I said numerous times when I taught parts therapy workshops throughout the 90s, I have all the parts I want, thank you very much. Oops, put foot in mouth, because when one of my twin daughters gave birth to my first grandchild, a new part formed in me, my inner grandpa. So I don't know how many parts we have as we progress through the timeline of life. But Gordon Emerson, who is a world-renowned psychologist and published author, and the protege of Watkins and Watkins, who originated ego state therapy, which is the variation of parts therapy, he researched it and feels that all of us have anywhere between 5 to 15 different parts of the subconscious or ego states that influence our conscious behavior in every given calendar week. And we have dozens more that we may never be aware of, but can also influence our behavior at various times. These parts can be called out during hypnosis. So what I do is use parts therapy for some of the clients some of the time when they have an inner conflict to help them resolve the inner conflict. I act like a mediator and talk to that part that wants to smoke and is rejecting the positive suggestions to quit. And then I call out that part that wants to quit, and I act like a mediator. And it's a process that is very client-centered when you do it properly. So that's the overview of it. It's based on the fact that we all wear different hats. So I get those two hats that want opposite goals and act like a mediator to help them. I help negotiate terms of agreement. So in a nutshell, that's the overview of what parts therapy is.
So Roy, I know it's a lot more complicated and extensive than that, and having taken a lot of your trainings, I'm just, I'd like for you to maybe tell people here what is it? I know that Charles Tibbets pretty much handpicked you to carry on his legacy. And if you could tell us maybe just a little bit about that and how you had permission, from what I understand, to adapt and to kind of update, if you will, some of the techniques and things. So can you explain maybe some of the ways that you have changed his original work that he did with parts therapy from the beginning? And what were your reasons?
That's a good question. I have made a few minor updates, but the largest update I made was way back in the 1980s when I first started practicing parts therapy. Charlie acted like an arbitrator rather than a mediator. The difference between mediation and arbitration is the arbitrator calls out the parties that have a conflict and ask each person to state his or her position. Then the arbitrator decides what the best resolution is and then convinces the two people in arbitration to accept the arbitration, especially in binding arbitration. And I was involved in binding arbitration years ago, before my current marriage, when my previous wife and I had a landlord who tried to sue us for normal depreciation on a rental house. He claimed that we didn't clean it properly, even though we paid a professional cleaner $250 to professionally clean it. And the difference is when arbitration is finished, usually both parties feel somewhat satisfied and somewhat frustrated. In mediation, the mediator asks questions and helps the two people find their own terms of agreement, coming up with compromises. I learned it Charlie's way. He called the arbitration process the Great Debate, and he even wrote about the Great Debate in Miracles on Demand, which has been out of print for decades. But he coddled that Great Debate. He loved it, and then he got word that I was no longer teaching the Great Debate, and he called me on the phone. And when I answered the phone, he said, "Hey, Hunter, this is Tibbets. I hear you're no longer teaching the Great Debate. What's with this?" And I said, "Charlie, I'd like to come up and talk to you face to face rather than on the phone. So would lunch tomorrow be okay, or would you prefer later in the week?" He said, "I'm free for lunch tomorrow. Come on up." So I drove the 45-mile drive from Tacoma to Edmonds, which is north of Seattle. And I told him that several months into my certification and practice, I had not one, but several parts therapy sessions go south. Charlie was a master debater. He won debate contests. I'm not a good debater. I don't like conflict. I avoid conflict. I tend to be a peacemaker. So I found that I lost several of the debates and the sessions went south and they backslid and either came back to me several months later for a second attempt, or they went, unfortunately, to another hypnotherapist after they backslid. But I learned that they failed because I spent 5 years surveying my clients at 6 months, 12 months, and 18 months. I wanted to know my long-term success rate. So anyway, I thought that I should mediate, and my success rate improved greatly. And another difference is if you arbitrate, one or both parts might have a little bit of resentment towards the arbitrator, meaning the hypnotherapist. When you mediate, you maintain rapport with each participating part, which is an extremely important concept to keep in mind when you go through the steps of the parts therapy process. I've organized it into 3 phases. the preparation phase, which includes the intake and the pre-talk about parts therapy. The 11-step process, which is the actual parts therapy process itself in hypnosis. And then the debrief, the conclusion, which includes the debrief, post-hypnotic suggestions, and emerging from trance in a slightly different order. I mean, you're going to give post-hypnotic suggestions first, and then emerge, and then do the debrief. So I go through the entire process step by step. There's some background information because one of the gifts to our entire profession from Charlie is what he called the 4 hypnotherapeutic steps to facilitate change. I prefer to call them the 4 cornerstones of client-centered hypnosis. As Charlie found out long before I got certified in '83, that hypnosis scripts, suggestions, and imagery work for some of the people some of the time, but not for all of the people all of the time. So people that just go through a quickie training program of a week or 2 weeks and use a good script, they might get good testimonials from the people who do succeed. But a high percentage of people have subconscious resistance, and the benefit of hypnotherapy, or hypnoanalysis, as they call it in the United Kingdom, and a lot of people in the States now call it hypnoanalysis, is you don't diagnose, but you solicit the subconscious to disclose what the core cause is of the subconscious resistance to change. So the second step of that foundation is discover. Notice I did not say diagnose. You discover the cause of a problem. And the third step of that foundation is release, because if the person is unable to emotionally release his or her attachment to that core cause, they're going to backslide. And then once you have discovered the cause and you have released the cause, then the subconscious is now much more willing to accept the subconscious reprogramming. And then you go back to suggestion and imagery. You can also use NLP or the tapping, EFT, if you wish, to help enhance the change to make it more permanent. That means that it's a good idea if you want to practice client-centered hypnosis. In my professional opinion, it's wise to learn regression therapy, even though I only use it with less than a third of my clients. And also either parts therapy or one of its variations. Variations include ego state therapy, voice dialogues, 6-step reframe, which is really the grandchild of Virginia Satir's Parts Party. So any of you who are into NLP, if you are familiar with this 6-step reframe, that's a variation of parts therapy. The process is slightly different, but I've made some minor changes as well that have increased the success rate over the years. And the way I teach it in a step-by-step process is very effective, has a very high success rate, but it has passed the test of time. There's no technique that's so good as going to work for all the people all the time. But parts therapy is so effective that when it is properly facilitated, after I stopped arbitrating and started mediating, I probably could count on my fingers the number of failures. And the worst failure I ever had was with a man who was retired from Big Pharma. And his psychodynamic was guilt. And I know firsthand the greed of Big Pharma, because back in the late 90s, I found out that I could use parts therapy to help reduce high blood pressure, because my blood pressure was 165/110, and I was put on the medication immediately by my doctor. I did not like the side effects, so I had one of my former hypnotherapy students use parts therapy on me, which parts therapy is great for a medical application of hypnosis. And When I found what the core cause was, I dealt with it. And then through a period of several months, I gradually weaned myself off of the blood pressure meds, little by little, gradually, rather than doing it suddenly. It would have been very dangerous to suddenly stop the meds. And then I went around soliciting doctors, canvassing doctors in the major hospitals in the Seattle-Tacoma area, trying to find a physician that would do some credible research so that we could get a grant and use hypnosis to help reduce blood pressure. Then the head of one of the major hospitals, I will not say which one, called me into his office and warned me to back off. I said, why? He said, you seem like a nice person. He said, I'll preface this by saying, I believe hypnosis can help reduce blood pressure. He said, however, if you use hypnosis to help people reduce blood pressure and go public with it, he said, there'll be a trooper or a law enforcement officer ring your wife's doorbell some evening and tell her that you met with a fatal accident on the way home from your office. I was shocked. I looked at him in total astonishment. I said, are you threatening me? He said, no. He said, but Big Pharma makes billions of dollars by putting people on life sentences of medications. So this retired top executive of Big Pharma saw me for Parkinson's. The interesting thing was, when he was in hypnosis, the very noticeable tremors stopped totally. They resumed when I emerged him from hypnosis. But even though he felt that hypnosis could help with the Parkinson's, he had also, unlike most people who have not been certified in our craft, he got a hold of my parts therapy text, Hypnosis for Inner Conflict Resolution, and he felt parts therapy was his ticket for overcoming Parkinson's. The problem was, one of the psychodynamics, 7 primary categories of causes of problems, is self-punishment or guilt. That part of him that created the Parkinson's was punishing him for all of the crimes that he committed as one of the top executives in Big Pharma. And I believe it because my life had been threatened back in the late 90s. So I have never gone public about the fact that hypnosis can help reduce blood pressure. I have not taken any blood pressure medication in over 2 decades. And just a few weeks ago, I had an exam and my blood pressure was 116/78, which the doctor said was really good for a 76-year-old.
Nice.
And parts therapy was a great way to find out what part of me sent my blood pressure into the stratosphere over 20 years ago and why. And it clarified what I needed to do to deal with it.
So Roy, I think what you're actually beginning to answer the question that I had next for you anyway, and that is, what's the response? Are there people in mainstream medicine then that do endorse and support the work that you're doing?
Increasing numbers are doing so. Thank you for asking that question. As far as regression therapy, the Art of Hypnotic Regression Therapy, a clinical guide that Bruce Eimer and I co-authored, has built a bridge between hypnotherapy and psychology because, as some of you may already know, Bruce was a pain psychologist for quite a number of years at a major hospital in Philadelphia. Now he's retired from the hospital and moved to Florida, setting up a hypnotherapy psychology practice in Florida. And as a result of that text, several psychiatrists and physicians have actually talked to me since the publication of that book and told me, I've heard from several sources, that the credibility of many instructors in our profession who believe in competent training as opposed to the 1 or 2 week quickie courses is having a good impact on enhancing the acceptance of hypnotherapy in mainstream medical community. So I feel really good about that. The end of the story on the Parkinson's guy, by the way, is his higher power part told him that it was, in so many words, that it was his karma, that he had to deal with it now or come back in a future lifetime that wouldn't quite be so good. Whether you believe in past lives or not, it gave him a reason to not feel like he failed. He felt, rather than failing, he felt that now he understood that his Parkinson's was a form of punishment for what he did, and it was a lesser punishment than going to prison. Anyway, back to your question.
Well, actually, I want to back up a little bit. I hope you don't mind.
No, that's fine.
But you said something earlier, and I was taking notes, and I didn't hear it. And then William actually asked a question in the chat room, and that was, you were talking about the four cornerstones. I'll tell you what, you know, we're people that love to hear there's a list of 4 things or the ABCs of or something like that. Do you mind if we just ask you once again to just tell us what the 4 cornerstones are?
Suggestion and imagery, that's your starting point. That's all you need for some of the people some of the time. But when they fail to have lasting success with suggestion and imagery alone, you must accomplish all 4 steps and consider those steps your hypnotherapy objectives. The second step is discover the cause. The third step is release. The client has to be released from his or her emotional attachment. Excuse me. The client has to be released from his or her emotional attachment to the cause. And then subconscious reprogramming. Now that the cause has been discovered and released, the subconscious is far more open to accepting the desired change. In regression therapy, the release happens through forgiveness of self and the real or imagined perpetrator. Because before I ever do regression, I explain the risk of false memories to a client. In parts therapy, the release happens when the 2 parts that have a conflict come to terms of agreement. And you might wonder, why is parts therapy good for medical hypnosis? Whenever there is a subconscious cause for the medical condition, it's a good idea to find out what part is causing the condition and what part wants to overcome it. Mm-hmm. And Bruce Eimer, being a pain psychologist, found out that even though he personally studied ego state therapy under John and Helen Watkins while they were still alive, he found that the protocol that I have taught through parts therapy is a very practical approach for people who suffer from chronic pain. So there's a little bit of his protocol in the parts therapy workshop. And I appreciate that contribution. Basically, Bruce, I believe, made groundbreaking history adapting parts therapy to chronic pain patients, which is great. I think that should go down in hypnosis history that people can read about a century from now.
Is certification available then in parts therapy?
It's still in its beta form, but I would say yes, it's optional. To be certified in parts therapy means you need to demonstrate that you understand some of the knowledge. So if someone wants certification, that's something I offer at a slightly additional proctoring fee. And the certification means you have to pass a test. Mm-hmm. You can't just sit there and get a certificate, but if you go to the parts therapy workshop, you do get 2 days of continuing education credit.
Yeah. Are there prerequisites for that?
For the parts therapy?
Yeah.
For the parts therapy, and I'm not talking about train the parts therapy trainer, but for the Thursday, Friday, you can take Thursday, Friday. I'm sorry, Wednesday, Thursday. You can do the pre-conference without doing the post-conference.
You have to be a certified hypnotist.
You have to be a certified hypnotherapist or at the last quarter of a comprehensive hypnosis training program. So if you are a hypnotherapy student and you're only in the first few weeks, best to wait until next year.
Yeah, got it.
If you are far enough along that you've already received training in regression therapy, or you are very within a few weeks of being certified in a long course. I don't mean a few weeks, meaning your course is only 2 weeks long. That I'm sorry, that doesn't cut it if you're in an NGH 2-week crash course.
Yeah, got it. Now, so then there is, so that's Thursday and Friday, right?
Wednesday and Thursday.
I'm sorry, Wednesday, Thursday. Okay.
Right.
Of course, because Friday is meeting day.
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday represent the IMDHA IAC Hypno Expo conference.
Sure, of course. So then on Monday and Tuesday is your Train the Parts Therapy Trainer program. Is that right?
That is correct.
And tell us.
And for that, if someone who has at least 2 years experience full-time in the profession, or 3 or 4 years part-time experience in the profession, and they have taken my 2-day parts therapy workshop, either before the IMDHA conference or in the past somewhere, because I've had the privilege of teaching parts therapy in over 20 countries since the parts therapy text was published. They are eligible to take the Train the Parts Therapy Trainer program because I realize my time on this planet is limited, and I want to be sure that parts therapy is taught properly when I'm no longer here to teach it. The reason I say that is because there are some people out there who, rather than learning it properly and compensating a 10% royalty, they want to put their own spin on it. And I've heard several people give me feedback of mistakes that have been made because it wasn't taught properly by somebody who got the book and decided, why should they go pay to get certified to teach it when they've taught other hypnosis? So they just put parts therapy in there. If they teach it properly from the book, I guess I can't complain about that. But I have been encountered several times by people who've taken parts therapy from somebody. I will not even mention his or her name. I will not even mention which country that person lives in. But there was a very bad mistake of inappropriate leading, which could have severe consequences. And the type of inappropriate leading was they were teaching people to use parts therapy to go look for real or imagined entities. So whether or not you believe in entities, if a person at a subconscious level would rather say the devil made me do it, that way they don't have to take responsibility for their own mistakes, that's an easier escape route. The problem is when you go looking for a real or imagined entity, what happens if the person doesn't have any entities, but you convince him or her that they do? I can tell you several times what has happened, because in one case years ago, I personally witnessed somebody do an inappropriate entity release, and the lady saw me personally 3 days later. She said, I don't feel like I had an entity. What happened? So I did a form of spiritual hypnosis, which, by the way, is a variation of parts therapy, as Patty well knows, since you contributed to my book. Thank you for your contribution. In hypnosis and parts therapy, when I called out her higher power part, that part of her most closely connected to her perception of God or higher power, and asked what part was speaking, the response was, there was an entity speaking through me, but the entity belonged to the presenter. She embarrassed herself in front of 80 of her peers And she felt so guilty, she didn't even eat lunch with everybody because the presentation was before lunch. Instead of eating lunch with her peers at a hypnosis conference, she sat on the steps and cried the whole time. I learned that from somebody else.
Mm.
And then several years after that, I was selling books at a hypnosis conference. I won't say which one. And another hypnosis instructor came up to me. I will not even mention whether it was a he or a she or which country the person was from.
Roy, there's a whole lot of stuff you're not telling us.
Yeah. Well, I don't want the person's identity to be known because this person is both an instructor and an author. And this person said, I just want to say goodbye. I said, are you leaving the conference early? And the response was, no, I'm leaving the profession. And I said, my God, why? Tell me about it. This person was scheduled for a 3 o'clock presentation at a hypnosis conference a few months earlier and got there early because that person wanted to get a feel of the room, the vibes in the room. But there was another presenter in that room at 2. So this person decided to listen to the 2 o'clock presentation, which was entitled Spiritual Hypnosis. And because this person was on a spiritual path, he or she decided to stay. Well, I can still protect the identity and just say she decided to stay and listen to the presentation. And since it was on spiritual hypnosis and she wanted to do the spiritual thing, she was the volunteer. Little did she realize until it was too late that the presenter used hypnosis to go looking for entities, possessing or attaching entities. She said that she felt like she didn't have an entity, but when the presenter yanked 2 real or imagined entities out of her, she felt really embarrassed because several of her hypnotherapy graduates were in the audience. Yeah. And she said her confidence went down the toilet. She said that she felt guilty and embarrassed and humiliated in front of her students. It created some loss of self-esteem. And she said when she got back home, her client base dropped by over half. And she said she only had 4 students sign up for her next hypnotherapy course and decided, she said, when these students are certified, I'm going back to my previous vocation.
Yeah.
And occasionally I'll offer a pro bono session and just ask someone to pay it forward. Mm-hmm. In this case, I didn't even do that. I simply said, would you help me put the sheet on top of my table? And she said, sure. And then I said, follow me. She said, where are we going? I said, I'm going to do a session for you and call out your higher power. So we walked outside. I didn't ask her if she wanted a session. I just told her I was going to do a session. I just knew intuitively I had to. I'm not used to simply telling someone what to do. Unless it's someone in one of my training programs and they're doing something that's incorrect. So it was a nice day. So we walked outside, past the people who were eating lunch, found table, chairs, and umbrella about 20 feet away from the closest people eating lunch. I called out her higher power. Same thing with the first story I told you. Her higher power said, those entities belong to the presenter. Yeah. Whoa. And apparently I was in the right place at the right time to save that woman's career in our profession, because many years have passed and she's still in our profession. And I won't tell you what country she lives in. I have to protect her identity.
Of course you do. Well, it's quite a story, Roy, about the dangers, I think, of the potential misuse or dangers of inappropriate leading or something. And it's one of the things that I know about you if there is a soapbox that Roy Hunter stands on often, and rightly so, it really is that about leading. So it's quite a story.
Thank you. Yeah, I use the same soapbox on inappropriate leading for regression as well, because I'll even let a client know we don't remember things correctly. Any teacher or parent of 2 or more children knows that 2 children can witness an event and give different versions 5 minutes later.
Mm.
And each child could believe that his or her version is the truth. So when I guide you into hypnosis to find out what the original cause was of your fear of flying or whatever the problem is, what you remember may be fact or fantasy, most likely a combination of both, but your subconscious responds as though the perception is true.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to ask you to release any emotional attachments you have to what you believe happened. And if you want to know whether or not what you remember is true, then I'm not the right person for you, because we all can remember things differently.
Yeah.
Even married couples have slightly different memories of events that happened several years in the past. So I think everyone in our profession who uses regression needs to give a short pre-talk on false memory, just like I give a pre-talk on parts therapy before I guide a client into hypnosis. So there are some pitfalls, like doing parts therapy or any of its variations, including 6-step reframe or voice dialogue or the Yagarian method without a pre-talk, can leave a client wondering if he or she has DID or multiple personalities.
Right. Roy, I was at a hypnosis convention, a conference some years ago, and I won't say which one.
Okay.
and there was an author there, a rather prominent one, and I won't say who taught a workshop on past life regression therapy, past life therapy. And in this workshop, he had made a statement to the whole audience that given our relative ages and things like that, that somehow or another in recent history, there were a whole lot of souls released to be reincarnated through specifically Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and through death camps in World War II. And then he proceeded to bring somebody up as a demonstration subject, and he asked her straight out while she was in hypnosis whether she resonated more with Nazis or with bombs. And I remember I was so appalled, and so again, I right back to you, Roy, and hats off to you. This is the kind of thing that I really appreciate about you, is that those kind of things never happen in your camp.
If any student did what you just described in my hypnotherapy class, that student would have had a private talking to, or possibly, if it was done in the classroom, a talking to in front of the whole class about how inappropriate that is.
Yeah.
Inappropriate leading, even if it's a past life regression.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Some people can create their own false memories. For example, an ancient Egyptian pharaoh wannabe can easily confabulate past life regression as an Egyptian pharaoh in ancient Egypt. But is it fact or is it fantasy? We can create our own false memories. So one of the things I mentioned, even in parts therapy, because occasionally someone doing parts therapy might have the client have a part that goes into a spontaneous regression. So I suggest that anyone who wants to come to my parts therapy class can, but before you use parts therapy with the fee-paying client, I ask them to make a commitment to learn regression for those rare times, and it's not too often, but on rare occasions, a client will trance out into a regression when you facilitate parts therapy. So it's very important to know the risk of false memories. So even in the parts therapy workshop, I share my own experience with a false memory because it's very leading to say, I want you to go through the light and tell me if the light is a flying saucer. Now, I was the client.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
So I lectured the facilitator when she brought me up out of hypnosis and said, you need to get trained in regression therapy. Instead of apologizing, she said, you just don't want to believe that your out-of-body experience as a child was a UFO abduction. So she further compounded the inappropriate leading by trying to tell me that, yes, I was actually abducted by a UFO instead of having an out-of-body experience when I stepped on a scorpion at age 6. And to this day, I don't know which of the two regressions is more accurate. The one she mishandled or the one I had 2 years later, where the globe of light was the death angel there to stop me from passing over because it wasn't my time yet.
Mhm.
Now, each regression seems just as real and just as fabricated as the other. They cannot both be true.
But they could both be communicated.
I could find out which one is true, but it serves me better as an instructor to look my students in the eye or fellow professionals in the eye and say, if you mishandle a regression, your client won't know for sure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's better for me to say that with credibility because I still don't know for sure.
Yeah.
The spiritual part of me believes regression number 2 is closer to the truth,
Sure.
but who knows? Maybe they could have been spiritually enlightened aliens.
Yeah.
I can't say that I wasn't abducted, but I don't believe I was.
I
I
think
just know
that-
that I started to float up out of my body and I had a conscious memory of it that I never shared with anyone for decades other than my sister until after I read Life After Life by Raymond Moody.
Yeah. Well, there's something great about your ability to keep your mind open to it could be this or it could be this, and that's great. I'm noticing that we are already running out of time, and
Oh,
I
wow.
want to give you a chance first of all to let people know how can they get in touch with you if they want to do that.
I'm going to give you my personal email address.
Okay, so it's only going to be there for a minute. Nobody will see this on the recording, so let me
Okay.
read it out as well. It is
RoyHunter@msn.com. That's RoyHunter@msn.com.
Right.
If you lose that, you can message me on Facebook. I do professional mentoring. There's a fee for it. But,
And do you also have a RoyHunter.com website?
yes, I do.
Great.
I was lucky to get that in the late 90s when they first started allowing us to get our own websites.
Yeah.
And that's fortunate because there are several other people around the globe named Roy Hunter. One of them is a author of a book on hunting, and I believe he's in South Africa.
Mhm.
And he tried to grab it. He found out I already had it. So.
Well, we are over time here, but I just want to make sure if anybody had a question and we didn't get a chance for them to ask it, we're looking. Are you scanning for a hands up, Patty? If anybody?
I don't know. Of the people I see, there's no hands up. No.
Okay. And
Most of them I can't see.
in the chat room, we've got thanks from Rick Green and stuff. So with all that said, Roy, it's are you excited about Orlando?
I am. I think it's a better venue than Daytona Beach because it's more centrally located and the airfares are less expensive to Orlando than they are to Daytona Beach.
Well, and it's a beautiful hotel. And by the way, it's 6 miles from my house.
Wow, 6. I didn't know you lived in Orlando area. For some reason, I thought you were farther south.
No, straight up.
I will state that if any of you really want to come to the parts therapy workshop and have questions on the requirements, you can always email me. I have occasionally made certain allowances, like I had someone take the parts therapy trainer workshop 3 years ago who never took my parts therapy workshop live, but learned it from one of my videos and had a couple of years of practice and used the parts therapy text. So, but exceptions have to be cleared by me.
So, all right. So everybody, Roy Hunter at msn.com is the way to get a hold of this fella. And Roy, we really appreciate you being with us tonight. And Patty, thanks so much for filling in and helping me out. It's always great to have you on here as well.
Absolutely my pleasure.
All right. Okay, everybody. So
Practice long and prosper.
we will be back here 1 week from now, and next week our presenters will be Dan Cleary, who's going to talk about targeting pain, and Bruce Eimer, that Roy mentioned earlier, who will talk about hypnosis to treat depression. And he's got some exciting stuff that he's doing with that. So come and join us next week, same time, same bat channel, and we will be there. Take care, everybody, and have a great evening.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.